All right, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our January 25th, 2021 Belleville City Council regular meeting. We gathered today under the terms and conditions of a provincial declaration of emergency and during a second period of a province-wide shutdown, which is currently scheduled to be in effect from December the 27th, 2020 until February the 10th, 2021. We are all aware of the seriousness of these times and the sacrifices we are making for each other. I want to thank our staff for assisting in the setup of this electronic meeting of Belleville City Council. I also want to thank all members of council for their cooperation and flexibility in meeting under these unusual circumstances as permitted by the provincial government. While all members know of the need for cooperation during the best of times, these virtual meetings are difficult and awkward. I look to my colleagues for extra cooperation as we conduct the business necessary for the operations of the City of Belleville. I will call the meeting to order and state that all members of council are present. I am here at City Hall and all other members are present electronically. The attendance, as I said, we're all here. I'll ask the Director of Corporate Services, Mr. Matt McDonald, to lead us in a moment of reflection.
May we be worthy custodians of all that has been entrusted to us. Help us to be concerned only for what will promote good government. May we bring to our council chamber minds that think and hearts that feel, always having respect for others so that we may serve the people of our city in a helpful manner and for the good of all.
Thank you. Disclosure of pecuniary interest and general nature thereof. Does anyone have anything they'd like to disclose? Seeing none. Public meetings, there are none today, and so we'll move to reading and confirmation of the minutes of the meeting of January the 11th, 2021. Can I get a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Councillor Kelly, seconded by Councillor Millette. Any questions or discussion on the minutes from the January 11th meeting? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? It's carried. There are no deputations today, and there is no correspondence. I would like to address an item at the last council meeting. Sorry, just give me a second here. At the last council meeting, Councillor McCaw rose on a point of personal privilege. I reserved my ruling at that time so I could look into this matter further and attempt to resolve it. Since then, I've had a conversation with Councillor Millette, and he forwarded to me an email he had sent to Councillor McCaw, in which he explained the intent of his comments and apologized if anyone had been offended, as that was not his intention. I thank Councillor Millette and consider this matter closed as he issued an apology. Over the course of this 4-year term that we will serve together, there are many occasions when we are asked to comment about the many civic issues we deal with, and sometimes we even comment without being asked. There are bound to be times when we misspeak, and sometimes those words may cause offense or even hurt. In those times, a simple apology is not an admission of fault, but can be an indication that you didn't mean offense. I myself have issued apologies without being prompted, and I know others have as well. So I appreciate Councillor Millette clarifying his intention and apologizing for any unintended offense and consider this matter closed, as I said. Lastly, I have been pretty consistent in considering and ruling on points of personal privilege requests this term. If some did or could take offense, I ruled that there should be an apology. And this has allowed us to deal with these matters amongst ourselves. If we are not able to consider these matters simply because they did not occur at the exact meeting, then the only recourse for members of council is to request a ruling from the Integrity Commissioner based on the Code of Conduct, including the very loosely worded section 6.2. I think back to the costly and unnecessary reports that we dealt with over the past year and a half, and I don't think any of us want to see more, but that is what we will get if we cannot deal with these potential issues in the way outlined in the point of personal privilege. I think we would all agree that we don't want that. The best way to deal with these matters when they come up from time to time is how Councillor Millette has done. I thank you all for your consideration on this matter and how we can all work together to minimize misunderstanding. I need a motion to go into committee of the whole to hear and consider reports, passing of recommendations and resolutions with myself in the chair. Moved by, mover please, Councillor Thompson, seconded by Councillor Sandison. All in favor? It's carried. So we'll move to reports, and the agenda shall include under reports items that warrant individual attention from council. Start with 8A1, the use of the Quinte Sports and Wellness Center as a COVID-19 vaccination center. It is the Chief Administrative Officer's report number CAO 2021-01. And the resolution is that pursuant to the CAO's report number CAO 2021-01, use of the Quinte Sports and Wellness Center as a COVID-19 vaccination center, council approves the request from the Hastings Prince Edward Public Health to use a portion of the Quinte Sports and Wellness Center as a COVID-19 vaccination center. Can we get this on the table, please? Moved by Councillor Millette, seconded by Councillor Sanderson. Any questions or comments, colleagues? Councillor Millette.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you, I guess, to CAO Bove. It was brought up to me by a citizen before we got this report and before that health unit, I guess, had approached us for use potentially. This citizen was offering to volunteer if this in fact happened and we had to use a community vaccination site, perhaps transportation for those unable to drive or shut-ins, as this person put it. Mr. Bove, has there been any discussion as this plan, or if it moves forward, would we be using perhaps transit for that role, or is that even been discussed?
Mr. Bove, go ahead.
Through the chair to Councillor Millette, at this point, there has been no discussion on the technical details. There's simply a request that the health unit is looking at multiple locations, and this was one site that they were particularly interested in, but that's been the extent of the discussion at this point.
Yes, thank you. I didn't think it had progressed along that far down the road, but thanks very much. I just thought I'd ask. Thanks.
All right, Councillor Thompson.
Yeah, on the vaccination sites, and I know the school isn't in our jurisdiction or authority, was there talk of also using Quinte Secondary School also as one of the sites, or is that really not the place where I should be asking this?
I can provide you information. My understanding is that the Quinte Sports and the Quinte Secondary School site is going to continue to be used as a COVID-19 testing center until at least June, and that is an agreement between Quinte Healthcare, so the hospital, and the school board to use that facility, because Quinte Healthcare actually runs the testing at that site. What happened in this case here is that General Hillier, who is running the vaccination program for the province, had reached out to municipalities and asked us to work cooperatively with our health units, who will be responsible for the distribution of the vaccine. And so I've had some conversations with Dr. Oglaza, and they really like this location because it can be easily separated from the rest of the Quinte Sports and Wellness Center. As Councillor Millette said, there is transit, there's plenty of parking. You can enter and exit from that building, from that area without going in, as I said, the other parts of the facility. And it can also be made available through the summer. Right now, our plans would be that we would make it available until after the long weekend in September. And it can be available at any time without interrupting what we don't expect to be a very heavy program schedule.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else have any questions or comments on this item? Councillor Kelly. Here, go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Chair, just a quick comment. I think it's the right place. I'm glad that the city's going to work with Hastings Prince Edward Public Health. It's got parking, it's accessible, and it's just the right spot for the city to have the vaccination center at the sports center. Question for you. It says March until September. So am I to read into this and the residents of the city that we hope to get this up and going with vaccines where lots of people will be getting the vaccination in 5 weeks?
Yeah, that's currently the plan the province has. As you know, the first phase is long-term care residents and long-term care employees as well as hospital employees. And so they are, I think, expecting to have those all completed sometime into the month of March. And then phase 2 for the general population was going to start in April. Now, even in spite of the delay with the Pfizer deliveries of vaccine this week, where we won't be getting any at all this week, they're still, I think, quite optimistic about how this is rolling out. So while the date here says March, we may actually be able to provide it earlier if they need it. And so we'll see. But what we wanted to do was we wanted to make sure this was brought before council, that there was a resolution, and that we could then make it available to the health unit for whenever they need it. Okay, anyone else? All right, the questions on the floor, all in favor? It's carried. 8A2, request to permit blasting for Riverstone subdivision at the southeast corner of Farnham Road and Scott Drive. And it is the project manager construction report number ENG 2021-02. And the resolution is that the request from Ainley Group on behalf of GCL Development Limited to permit blasting within their development located at the corner of Farnham Road and Scott Drive be denied, with the subdivision agreement having a clause inserted stating this, and that City Council affirms its position that blasting is not permitted within public road allowances or for development on private property where such blasting is likely to cause damage to public or private property. Can we get this on the floor, please? Moved by Councillor Carr, seconded by Councillor Sandison. I'll open it up for questions and discussion. Councillor Carr, you go first, and I see Councillor Williams.
Thank you. And I know this matter's come up. I actually saw a report from 2002 when I was here before. The biggest concern I have with the blasting, and I appreciate the fact that it's gotten a little bit more modernized over the years, is particularly in that area as it relates to private wells and any changes that occur with the aquifer because of blasting. You know, it's one thing to be worried about existing infrastructure, and so we should, but for those folks in the rural areas that require groundwater in which to have potable water, to have any deviation whatsoever would be a significant concern. And unless you're on a well, you don't really appreciate the fact that you could suddenly be without water. And I know that some residents that kind of back onto current developments now, particularly those with dug wells, are finding it extremely difficult to obtain enough groundwater to have potable water at their homes. So I think for the purpose of this particular request, I agree that we should deny it. In the report, it does talk about perhaps re-reviewing this down the road and developing a policy, and perhaps even having some controlled blasting depending on where, and some different variables. If I refer over to page 7 of the report, it just talked about some reconsiderations of the blasting, and there's some bullets here that perhaps the city should look at. If staff were ever to go down that road and look at blasting of any sort, you know, and there is a point about impact on private wells, I really think developers should be looking at establishing a baseline for existing homeowners on the periphery of these particular developments to make sure in terms of what their well is currently operating at, what the groundwater is like in that area, because it's hard then to go back later and say, well, this particular development or this particular instance caused an adverse reaction to my well. And the other side is that if we were to ever get into a point where we're going to consider it, I think we should kind of look at this similar to what we would a planning application, and make sure that notice has gone out and that there is some actual signage in the area, so that we can also get feedback. We can certainly make that determination based on city infrastructure and homes in the area. But I think it's important that, if particularly as we develop in areas that were once rural, that there be good communication out there so that people can take steps in advance to prepare if this should ever occur in the future. So, but for the purpose of this, I'll support the motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Williams.
Thank you. I had the opportunity to speak today to the developer and the planner, both because this is, you know, something that is new. We haven't seen, again, we see one of the asks for this was back when George Zagoras was mayor. It seems like a long, long time ago. And from my understanding, I guess blasting now is not how it used to be. I think blasting, you'd think of something like Star Wars or Fred Flintstone or something where it's this big dangerous event. I guess now blasting is computerized, it's controlled, and it's advanced a lot further than in the last 22 years. And I think that's a big point. And I think for those developers, the plus of this is that it takes half the time. When they're able to do it now, I guess they've done blasting last year, 100 meters from the Peace Tower in Ottawa. But I talked to the mayor of Quinte West, Jim Harrison, who said that they did blasting also when they put the waste pipe through the Trent River, and they saw no adverse effects. But also, I think it's something now that it's just through technology and innovation is just a lot easier than it used to be. And it's something that perhaps I can ask Director Ashton if we've reached out to some other municipalities through this process. And I know that the one phrase that's in this report that I guess that the developer and planner are saying causes some alarm is likely to cause damage, because I guess when this is occurring in other municipalities, including Quinte West, they're not seeing damage. It is actually working very well. And the only thing that I think that I've heard from Councillor Carr, which is new and I haven't asked for, is about the aquifer. Perhaps I'll ask Director Ashton if the aquifer was something ever mentioned or investigated, and two, if we've spoken to other municipalities. So Quinte West would be the one I'd be looking for to see if this is something that's occurred and what the effects of that are.
Okay, Director Ashton.
Okay, we have looked at other municipalities, more of a cursory review, and as well as the developer's engineer. For staff to be comfortable bringing back a comprehensive policy that meets best practices, we would definitely want to do a larger survey than just a few surrounding municipalities. In terms of the aquifers, I guess that is something that, you know, depending on who you're discussing it with, some engineers might think that might assist the water table. Some people might think it's detrimental. I think the information we have kind of reviewed to date is that it is something that if we're going to move forward, we need to take the time and do a comprehensive review of the policy and to form guidelines and to kind of make sure that we have the resources to do this, to go through legal for as well. And again, there's a public education process of this, and we would also expect a lot of resident calls and complaints. So how do we deal with that? We just refer those to the developer's engineer, those sorts of things. So in light of, and staff isn't in the position to say that we should or shouldn't do blasting in the future. We just need to do a policy, a more comprehensive policy, and having discussions through the developer and their engineer. The suggestion was that if this is something that the Quinte Home Builders Association wants to pursue, then that might be something as an organization that they could sort of review best practices and develop that framework as well and come back to the city with the proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, and through yourself, your worship. I think what I understood too is that we have Dylan hired to complete the new engineering standards manual, correct? And I think an item coming up next, we're talking about the developmental charges, but I think QHBA has already been engaged to meet. Is that something that we're working with them on as well? The engineering standards manual, including this kind of a policy as we move forward?
I think the engineering standards would be more typical engineering standards that you would see. This would be something that would be above and beyond, sort of as almost a separate policy. So yeah, we wouldn't involve. So to date, no, this isn't included in what we're developing for development guidelines that you're referring to.
Okay. Well, I think just to add on to my colleague, Councillor Carr, as we continue to work with QHBA through the year and work through this, I would, yes, very much like to see that we compare to other municipalities, look at the aquifer, but look at the new innovation and technology of this. And although it may not be something we do now, I know the adverse effects right now is that there's going to be 80 days of having those hammer drills out on that development. But perhaps that's the best idea right now until we get this policy, but hopefully we can get that done by the end of the year. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Millette.
Thank you, Your Worship. And I guess this is more of an observation on this. I know the area in which this subdivision and the others are located, if I'm not mistaken, is largely fairly porous limestone, as is a lot of the topography or the geology in that area. And further to Councillor Carr's observation that when you get into this kind of an area and you do have wells, limestone being porous, any disruption in the limestone from blasting can certainly have an adverse effect. And I know some of the existing homes out there that are on wells. I've spoken to 2 people out along that way, and they're concerned. The other side of this, however, was touched on briefly by Councillor Williams, is that the folks in that area had better get ready for 4 to 5 months straight of 12-hour day HORAM, which is, it's not a pleasant experience from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. to listen to a HORAM constantly being slammed into rock. It's not a tick tick tick. It's more of a really repetitive slamming noise. So those neighbors are in for a long 4 to 5 months of this if we don't allow blasting. But I will follow the recommendations of April Bronson on this and say, but we definitely do need to take a closer look at this going forward, and possibly in conjunction with the home builders. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Councillor Cully, I've got you next on the list. Do you want to activate your microphone?
Thank you.
Go ahead,
Through
sir.
you, Your Worship. I spoke to someone that does blasting today, had a conversation with this individual who's been doing it for years as a profession. They talked about it's a lot quicker, it's cheaper, there is new technologies Councillor Williams touched on, but some of the concerns are fly rocks, time of day you're going to be doing the blasting. There's a lot of challenges that go into it. I have a question for Mr. Ashton from planning. How often does the city get asked to do blasting? Let's say over the last 10 years, how many requests have you had?
All right, probably Director or CAO Bove would probably be in a better position, but they're in the report from the file. There is sort of an indication that we've had, I think, 3 requests, I believe it was.
So 3 in 10 years?
And I think a lot of it too, it might be that our subdivision agreements do specifically say no blasting is allowed. So that may also play into it, that we don't necessarily get asked because that is a condition of subdivision approval.
No, that's fair. That's all I had for you. Thank you.
Right. Mr. Bove, I wonder if you want to add anything to it in terms of you were the director of that department before your promotion for many, many years. How often were you contacted about blasting before?
Certainly through the chair to council, Director Ashton is right. I think the clause in the subdivision agreement that we have now probably precludes a lot of formal requests that we get, but certainly my experience was it was a fairly regular request. And in most instances, when staff explained the city's position of not supporting blasting, then they moved on and carried on with their development and didn't make a formal request like we have today in front of council.
Okay. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Question. there's been a lot of talk about looking to the future. Do we have plans in our planning department to look at a new policy for blasting? Because, you know, I've certainly heard from everybody that there's new technology, and I would be scared about blasting because of the fracking of the land and the effects on wells and that. But if there's new technology out there, so my question is, if we are looking at it, how long would it take to bring down a fairly extensive document on this?
All right, I'll direct that to Director Ashton. Did you hear the question, Director Ashton?
Yes. Thank you. Our EDS has initiated a couple of our semi-annual meetings with the Quinte Home Builders Association. Obviously, we have an ambitious plan in place through City Council, many engineering projects,
Director
lots
Ashton,
of
you're
development
breaking up.
applications. So in terms of getting to the point where we have the time to prepare policy. Oh,
So maybe just give us
it must be a bad connection. Can you hear me
do you have an
now?
estimate in terms of a number of months,
No.
perhaps, for Councillor Thompson's question, or do you want to me to pose that to CEO Bove?
We can give it to CEO Bove because of
Okay.
the interventions, and
Yeah.
I feel bad for Mr. Ashton. But Rod, can you add a little bit? That would be great.
Certainly, through the chair to Councillor Thompson, I expect that the department will want to sit down with the Quinte Home Builders, and it makes sense to have a consistent policy and let them have involvement in it. Unfortunately, I think you're probably looking at several months before they would have a draft policy back for council to review.
Yeah, and that's fine as long as we're a busy city, and if it takes several months, but at least we're looking at it because new technology, and it may take a year to get to the new developers, but at least it's there and they can look forward to something in the future. So thank you.
Great, thank you. Anyone else on this item? So the motion is on the floor that the application be denied, or the request be denied. I'll call the question. All in favor? It's carried. Then we'll move to 8A3, the finalization of development charge bylaw. And it is the Director of Engineering and Development Services and Manager of Finance Deputy Treasurer Report number DEDS 2021-02. And the resolution is that report number DEDS 2021-02, dated January 25th, 2021, regarding the finalization of development charge bylaw be received as information, and that City Council approved the 2020 citywide development charges as identified in Table 1 and Table 2 of this report, and that City Council determines that no further public meetings are required on this matter, and that Council approved the development charges background study dated November 12th, 2020 as amended, and that Council approved the capital project listing set out in Chapter 5 of the DC background study dated November 12th, 2020 as amended, and that a bylaw to establish uniform development charges for the corporation of the City of Belleville be prepared for Council's consideration. Can I get a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Councillor Williams, seconded by Councillor Thompson. Discussion on this. Councillor Thompson, I'll start with you.
Thank you very much. Just a very simple question. I know we're only in this approving a 10% for now. When do we expect the other bylaw to be brought forward, describing what our future increases will be? Because developers, part of the problem with this one was the developers were concerned about a full impact now. And if they're going to be pricing their houses very shortly for 2022, when do we expect the bylaw to be coming so we don't run into that situation again?
Yeah. If you recall at the last meeting on January 11th, in our conversations with the Quinte Home Builders, it would be coming back before the end of this year. So it'll November or December at the latest.
So they're quite prepared that if we have an increase, they're prepared that do we accept that within reason? And because they're pricing their houses now for 2022. I just want to make sure that they know that it won't be until the end of the year. So that's all. Thank you.
Yeah. If you recall, there were a couple of studies that were still waiting to come in, which may impact the financial consideration. In addition, they do understand the significant projects that are required in this next stage of development in the city. And I think Mr. Van Heusen's words were that they wanted to be fair and they understood that an increase is necessary. They just wanted to have more time to be able to discuss it with us. COVID has impacted some of that consultation, and they were comfortable with this compromise as an interim step before the bylaw would come back and we would deal with it again by the end of the year.
Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else on this item? Councillor Sandison.
Thank you, Your Worship, through the chair. When this was brought forward a couple weeks ago, I was opposed to the increase, and a lot of people took that to mean I didn't want the development charge to go up. I was opposed to the increase because it wasn't going up far enough, and so I really think we need to revisit it. The development charge is a complex calculation, but it's not a complicated problem. It's a matter of who pays the bill and how much do they pay. And it comes down to a council decision about dividing up the cost of growth between existing residents and new home buyers. So this issue, it isn't about affordability, it isn't about supply, it isn't about demand. It's about a basket of goods, which includes roads, water, wastewater, ambulance service, library, parks, and so on, and how we divide the bill up between new home buyers and existing residents. So I said before, and I'll say it again, this isn't a levy on the 20 Home Builders Association. This is new home buyers paying their fair share for growth. So existing residents have subsidized new home buyers here for far too long through taxes and user fees. And we need to remove the unfair financial burden from the backs of existing residents and have new home buyers pay their fair share. So if we use a 75% to 25% ratio, with 75% being paid by residents, existing residents, and the other 25% being paid for by new home buyers. The report that came to council showed that 25% was equal to $28,000. So that meant residents were paying $84,000 and the total would be $112,000. So that's how you get to the 28,000. So for us to reduce that 28,000 to 14 means that we're shifting that $14,000 over to existing home buyers, and we're changing the ratio from 75-25 to 87.5 to 12.5. And in doing so, we're adding a $2 million financial blow to existing residents. It's the equivalent of giving every new home buyer a $14,000 check when they buy a home. And that's courtesy of the existing taxpayers and residents in this town. So that said, the COVID pandemic has sort of unleashed economic hardship on our community. Businesses are struggling to stay solvent. Unemployed are having troubles putting food on the table and paying the bills. And our seniors are struggling to make ends meet as well. As a council, we have been helping residents with increases in their senior tax credits. We've deferred property taxes. We've deferred, garbage bag tags. I mean, we've done everything we can to help. But on development charges, we're hammering them right in the pocketbook. So previous councils have disproportionately burdened the existing residents with additional taxes and user fees beyond which they should be required to pay for support. And it's no longer sustainable, more so today than ever before. So this decision that we're making will have a greater direct financial impact on existing residents than our operating budget. This is a big deal for our existing residents. And when it comes back to council, I thought it was going to come back in 6 months. I expect and I hope it will be fair and balanced, and that new home buyers will be required to pay their fair share for the development charge for growth. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sanderson. Anyone else on this item? Councillor Carr.
Thank you. Before I do, could Director Hines let us know how much we have in the development charge reserve account, just approximate?
Sure. Director Hines, if you have a moment, can you share that information? I'm not sure if you have it at your fingertips.
I don't have it at my fingertips. I'll need to look that up.
Okay. If you just want to, when you have that, just activate your microphone and just let us know, please. Go ahead, Councillor Carr.
Okay,
I'll pull that up for you. When you
yeah, and I apologize for the last minute question, but as the debate's kind of moved on here, we have been collecting development charges over the years, and we've actually built up some healthy reserve accounts. And then as capital projects get funded, that yes, there's a portion that goes to the tax base, and there's also a portion, as council knows, that we fund through development charges, and that occurs across the board. And even as chair of the library, we consult with the city on development charges as we expand out services. Last term, Mayor Panchuk, you had spearheaded the drop box at the Quinte Sports and Wellness Center as an option, and we funded through development charges. So while we might be taking a little bit of a pause in terms of the amount that was originally proposed, we do have some moving parts on, and I said this 2 weeks ago, with regards to a couple of other studies, which I think are going to impact in terms of how the final development charge will look like. So again, I don't necessarily disagree with Councillor Sanderson's perspective in terms of where we need to go, but I think we'll have a more accurate picture once we have the some of these other studies complete. In the interim, we do have healthy development charge reserves. So as we continue to fund growth, that we do also include development charge monies that we've collected in the past. And so the fact that we're staff have been good to be prudent enough to make sure that there's a reserve account makes it much easier for us to do what we're doing today on a short-term basis, knowing full well that there's going to be some catch up down the road. So again, I don't have any objections to the current bylaw as it states, knowing that we have reserves as growth occurs. So the taxpayers, I don't believe existing taxpayers will be burdened with anything, that we do have a formula in which we divide and make sure that growth pays for growth, and we have the money set aside for that. And for those reasons, I can support this in the short term. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Anyone else on this item? Councillor Williams.
Thank you. I think just the point that's missing, and thank you colleagues for their comments. It's not just out-of-towners that are buying new homes, it's locals as well. I think we know, we've talked about this countless times. We're working on action. We've got an affordability crisis in this town. Last month, through Quinte Realtors stats, the average house eclipsed $462,000 on the market. It's going up and up. I remember 5 years ago, again, that the average price was $268,000. And I've often looked at Kelowna as a city to look at the comparable to, and their prices are $660,000, and we're getting closer to that every day. And when we add more costs or developmental fees right at the get-go, I mean, 124% onto developmental charges means that someone's going to take that and put that on that house. It's not going to solve the crisis we have. I'm a really big fan of this compromise we've come out with. It doesn't mean that we're not going to get these charges eventually, but it's going to be something that we work as a compromise with the home builders. And we have to remember the home builders, it's not just, every home builder is not building 300, 400 homes each. Some of them are building 4 or 5 homes. And when those charges go on, it hurts those builders. Costs of construction have gone up this year with COVID. We have a lot of different costs that have gone up. And if our goal as a city is to keep costs down for housing, and that's houses and rentals, we have to make sure that we're looking at all those costs. And yes, it's up to us to understand the costs that it takes to keep this city going. And that's why I've asked when the home builders get together with staff this year that we talk about intensification, because that might be growth that costs a little bit less. We know that growth costs money, and that's just the end of it. But we have to look at compromise. This is a good compromise. Saying that we're going to lose 2 million in 6 months on a number that we hadn't approved yet. It was a recommended number, is like saying the Buffalo Bills could have scored 24 points in the first half last night, and we all know they didn't do that. So we've got to look at the facts and make sure that we're going forward. This is a good compromise. I'm confident at the end of the year that we can find a good solution with the home builders to make sure charges go on, that we pay for growth. But moreover, we got to look at this as a bigger picture item, that we have affordability crisis in this city. We have to look at ways to keep that housing price down, because we're going to probably speak about later. One thing that came out yesterday was the U-Haul report that named Belleville is the number 4 city in I think it's Ontario for growth right now, and that's great news. But it's not helping that our house prices keep going up, because one day we might find those houses prices too high, and we want to avoid that. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Director Hines, I see that you put your hand up. Go ahead, ma'am.
I have the balance for the reserve funds. It's 11.6 million.
Okay, thank you. And that information is important because we can apply those development charges to projects along with taxation, and also when we get grants. But $11 million doesn't seem to go very far these days either, when it comes to having to do road work or other things. So that's the sum there. I see Councillor Sanderson wants to speak again. Councillor McCaw, do you have anything you want to say on this item? I was going to make a couple comments, and I'll go to everyone for a round 2. Go ahead, ma'am. Go ahead.
Thank you. I did have some figures that I was going to bring forward, but maybe that discussion is better served when we revisit this again in the future. I think those numbers might be a better time to go over the numbers that I have.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Yeah.
In relation to this matter.
So we'll go to a second round, but just before we do that, I just my 2 cents worth on this is that I think all of us, when you first get elected to Belleville City Council and you start to understand the financial aspects of how the city operates, how development operates, the costs, the things that we can put on taxes, the things that we can only use user fees for example, water and wastewater is not something that goes on to the tax bill. It is only borne by those who use it. And of course, all of these new subdivisions in the city, they want to have water and they want to have wastewater. And so, that's what's putting such pressure on our municipality in terms of some of those future investments. And, it becomes difficult. And, but we've got to balance the need for continuing to grow our population with paying for that growth. And growth should pay for growth as we move forward. One of the theme of my campaign was building our future together with safe, responsible growth. And I think that when we deal with development charges, we know that we need an increase, and it needs to be more than the 10%. But we also want to work with our partners in the Quinte Home Builders, and they understand that it needs to be more than 10% as well. And there's a couple of missing pieces for us to make this decision. As I said at the last meeting, we're required by law to review the development charge bylaw every 5 years. And the reason why municipalities don't do it more often is because of how expensive it is to do the review, not just in terms of money, but also in terms of staff time and attention that we've got to take away from other things. So we have to pass this today because our current bylaw will expire. I think that it is a good balance for us to come back again in the fall after we've had, I think there's 10 meetings scheduled, or 6 meetings, scheduled between our finance and planning staff, along with Quinte Home Builders, to talk about the actual projects that are going to be needed to see investment in going forward. And so, you know, I think that's a reasonable compromise here. And I realize that every house built between now and when the new development charge bylaw comes in, and if it goes to a higher amount, when it goes to a higher amount, we will be short those funds. But going too quickly now and taking an increase that will actually drive the cost of housing higher may actually cause builders to go elsewhere. I also don't think is a good move. So this is a good compromise. We'll see what happens when it comes back. And I appreciate that there are different points of view on this as we move forward. Councillor Millette, I saw you put your hand up, and I see Councillor Kelly and I see Councillor Sandison on the second round. So Councillor Millette and Councillor Kelly on the first round, and then we'll go to Councillor Sandison on the second round. Councillor Millette. I can't hear you, Councillor Millette. There, go ahead. No, for some reason your sound is not coming through even with your microphone on mute. I'll go to Councillor Kelly and I'll come back to you, Councillor Millette. Councillor Kelly, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, I do. Can you hear me okay?
I can, yeah, go ahead.
All right, through you, your worship. I just wanted to pick up on something that Councillor Williams touched on. In his comments, Councillor Williams said he'd like to see the homes stay at 468,000. That was from recent stats that came out about 3 or 4 weeks ago. And we talk about affordable homes, and that's what it is. As Councillor Williams said, the average home in the city now, 468,000. And if you do the census reports from 2016, average couple in Belleville making just over 65,000. And the average salary per hour in the city of Belleville is $18 plus. So to purchase a home, if the average is at 468, and I know it was 5 years ago, the average was 267. Unless you got a lot of relatives or family who are helping buying you homes, it's pretty tough to buy a home that's close to $500,000 if you're making 60 combined and trying to raise your family. Or if you're trying to, you're working and you're making just over $18 an hour, it's not possible. So that's the reality that we live in. And the 468,000, I think for many is a dream, but that's a long shot to get to there. I just wanted to add in some thoughts on that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Millette, can we go back to you and see if your mic's working now? There you go.
I think, yeah, I've got a mute button on these on my Star Trek headphones here. So, yeah, so I just wanted to make it a little bit clear that there's a bit of a misconception, and I've been stopped a couple of times. People asking, is this 10%? That's it. And again, I just want to clarify, this is an interim 10%, and I understand that some people want to see us really as the phrase goes, put the boots to the home builders, because an awful lot of homes are being built. I don't want to see that either. And I just want to see them pay their fair share. It's an interim development fee right now increase. And I think it's, I agree with Councillor Sandison. I would have liked to see it come back sooner, but I'm good to wait till fall, because I believe that we need a healthy dialogue and a constructive dialogue with the home builders in the interim. But I'm good with 10% for now. Would I like to see it more? Absolutely, and I do want to see them eventually pay the fair share. But for now, I can go with 10. But I just want to be clear that it is, in fact, an interim 10%. It's that this isn't cast in stone going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Sandison on the second round. Thanks for your patience.
Oh, no. Thank you, Your Worship. And certainly I welcome the discussion, and I certainly align with the comments that Councillor Carr made in terms of, there's a couple of reports that will help us make a better decision. As I said at the onset, and unfortunately the discussion took a bit of a turn, this has nothing to do with affordability. This is about paying for growth. And the fact that our home prices, because others have brought it up, I'll mention it as well. The Quinte Real Estate Association published their numbers for December. And if you can believe this, they had a record number of sales. So that would be new homes and resales. And the average price for December was $564,000. That's just an incredible number. So when we think that somehow the city is going to control, the prices of homes, I mean, that's just not possible, right? I mean, we've got our SIP program, and we're going to help incentivize, the housing spectrum to the extent that we can. But this is a discussion about development charges. And the $2 million I mentioned was taken from a report that was presented to council, if we'd all had the chance to read it. So it wasn't a number I picked out of the air. And if I could just comment on the colorful language that my colleague, Councillor Millette, used. We're not putting the boots to the builders. In fact, we're putting the boots to the existing residents with the way it's currently structured. But I'm also hopeful that based on the discussion I'm hearing around the table, I think there is a general consensus that we need to. We only get one chance at this thing every 5 years, so it's really incumbent on us to take the time and do it properly and come up with a fair apportionment for both existing and for new home buyers. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, anyone else? Okay, so the resolution is on the table. I'll call the question. All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. We'll move on to 8A4, the Work in Belleville Program RED application. It is the Manager of Economic and Strategic Initiatives Report number ECDEV 2021-02. And the resolution is that the report number ECDEV 2021-02 regarding the submission of a grant application to the Rural Economic Development, or known as the RED Fund, be received, and further that staff be authorized to submit an application for funding to the RED program to support the Work in Belleville project, and that the budget be set at $60,000 for this project. Can I get a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Councillor Williams, seconded by Councillor Millette. Discussion. Anybody? Councillor Williams.
Thank you, through your worship. This is something that we've known for quite a long time. It's on the EDDC strategy. It's something that I remember talking about in the election. It seems like 40 years ago, and it's certainly something that even came up this week in QEDC. Last week, sorry, talking about the real problem we have right now in this region is employers not being able to find workers, if you can believe that. And a lot of it we find is a disconnect somewhere between getting resumes uploaded and also making sure that we have jobs posted. And when we're going to, I know from the last topic, but we're trying to get out of towners here, it's really going to advertise to those that are in Toronto and able to come here and bring a skill to help a company. And why this is really important is that companies can't grow if they don't have employees. And there's a lot of frontline workers that we're getting, and there's a lot of, I know that sometimes I post a job and there's a lot of applicants. So there are job seekers, but we're just not finding the jobs or the job seekers or the employees that have the skills that are going to help a company grow. And there's a lot of them. The QEDC identified last week almost 2,000 that they know of jobs that are available now that we can't fill. And that's a big problem. So kudos to the staff of our Economic Development Department. And I just had a question, if I can, through the chair to Manager Post, just regarding this program. And I understand the Work in Belleville program and how we're uploading resumes and making sure it's there. When we look at advertising, how are we advertising this to potential employees? And what resources from that 60,000 will go into the advertisement that helps fill these jobs?
Great. I see a Manager Post has activated her microphone. Go ahead.
Through the mayor to all of council. So what we're proposing is that about 40,000 of that $60,000 budget would be used for marketing and promotion of this program. At present, we're using word of mouth. We're providing links to people. There's no funding going into the advertisement of the current Work in Belleville program. And that's been a problem. It's a great resource, but we just haven't had the funding to really broadcast it. We get resumes from local people, but the marketing, we would really like to be able to target communities that have the skill sets that our employers need, and that advertising money would go toward that.
Councillor Williams?
Okay, thank you. That's great. And likewise, I think this is a regional effort. I know that QEDC, they are going to be working also on some different initiatives to help fill those labor gaps. And I think this is also great. And I think it's something that really fits with the city and the resources that we have. Just on a side note, just speaking about Toronto and COVID, the effect of COVID on those residents, besides the UHA report, the other report that came out from Toronto and talks about vacancy of rental market. It's the highest vacancy in 40 years and costs have gone down. People are leaving the city and looking for places like Belleville. So this is a great time to be advertising and making sure that we have eyes on the city. And again, to my point I've always made, if we want youth here, we have to have a job for them. And that's not only just for the youth growing up here, which is very important, it's also for residents coming in. So great program. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Councillor Williams. Anyone else? Councillor McCaw.
Thank you through you to Manager Post. Manager Post, have we made application to this program before? If you could refresh my memory.
Manager Post.
Yes, we have made application to the Rural Economic Development Program on many occasions in the past. It's been a great partner program for us that typically gets us 50% dollars for any project that we're looking for. We did run this application by our Rural Economic Development Advisor, and they feel this is an excellent application that squarely fits in to the priorities identified by the program.
And further to that, if I may, so we made application to it before. How many times have we been successful in our application to this program?
Well, we certainly haven't been successful every time we've applied. I don't have the numbers. You know, I'd probably say we're at least 50%. I'd say probably 50% of the time we've been successful.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, Councillor McCaw. Councillor Sanderson.
Thank you, Your Worship. My question is also for Ms. Post, the manager of economic and strategic initiatives. So the funding stream, I believe, closes by February the 1st. Have we already made an application through that stream?
Ms. Post?
Through the mayor to all of council, no, we have not made an application yet. We were waiting for council's approval before submitting the application.
Okay. And certainly, as I read through the Rural Economic Development Program, it certainly fits. I'm curious, is part of it setting up a new database, as I read through your report?
Yes, it would be. So right now we manage the program very manually. So people send us their resumes, they drop them off, we scan them, we store them in a database according to skill set. What we're proposing with this is that an individual would go on to the Work in Belleville site. They would be able to upload their resume and choose the category they want to be included under. So whether they're looking to be a health and safety specialist or a forklift driver or a retail worker, they could decide where their resume goes. And then staff, when they get a request from an employer for someone with, let's say, a health and safety background or a retail background, staff would be able to go to that category, pull the resumes out of there that match the skill set the employer is looking for, and simply email them to that employer, making that match quite seamless and easy.
Okay. Now, is this something that we're doing as a Belleville only, or are we going to develop this database in conjunction with the county and with Quinte West?
That's a great question. We're submitting the application as a Belleville only project. But like with other aspects of the Work in Belleville program, particularly the job fairs, we do partner with the city of Quinte West. And actually, as late as today, we've had conversations with the city of Quinte West about partnering with us on this database project as well. So assuming that can happen in time, it may reduce our costs for this project.
Okay, thank you, Manager Post.
You're welcome.
Okay, anyone else on the first round? I see Councillor McCaw wants to go on a second. Is a first round, Councillor Kelly, and then I'll, if there's no one else, then we'll move to Councillor McCaw.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Worship. Just a question for Karen Post. Karen, there's lots of job agencies out there, and in your report, one thing that I noticed was, and I'll read it, certainly finding skilled and experienced labor is an issue for many employers, but so is finding entry-level and low-skilled labor. So, I mean, I hear it all the time. People are out looking for work, but there's lots of other career agencies out there. You talk about someone brings their, or, you know, emails their resume into the city job bank, if you will, and potential employers come by possibly looking. I'm kind of a numbers guy. How many people would be actually contacting your department to find out what kind of talents out there that they may need? Is it a lot, seldom, or on occasion?
Through the chair to Councillor Kelly, I would say that we are often contacted by local employers looking for specific skill sets, wondering what we've got in our database. We do find a lot of repeat business from local employers. We would love to have more job seekers sending us their resume, and we'd love to have more employers relying on us for those resumes. Our challenge has been getting the word out, connecting with all of those employers and making sure they know that resource is available to them. So yes, it is used quite a bit. And we're really hoping to increase the number of businesses that use it, but decrease the amount of work that staff have to go through to manage those resumes.
Thank you. Maybe it's something that the city, we can enhance it to and continue to show the relationship we have with people hiring, because I'm not too sure if that word is out there and people understand it, that if they're looking for work, I'm going to go to the city of Belleville. Maybe there's something there, and as opposed to some of the other job agencies that are out there that help them with resume writing and finding something that they're going to excel at. So thanks for the information, and we'll continue to drive people to the city website or the city for work if they're looking. It's another option.
All right, thank you, Councillor Kelly. On the first round, seeing no more, then I'll go Councillor McCaw. Go ahead.
Thank you, Drew. And I just thought afterwards, Ms. Post, could you please tell us what is a red advisor, or who is the red advisor that you spoke of a few minutes ago?
Certainly. Through the mayor to Councillor McCaw. So we deal with a lady named Karen Fisher. She is the Ontario Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Rural Affairs advisor for this region, and she consults on all local rural economic development applications.
Thank you. And before, when I had asked you, have we been successful? You know, how often we were. What seems to be the reason that we're not successful more often?
That's a very good question. It's often very difficult to get information out of the program in terms of why an application was successful and why one wasn't. The standard response we get is the program is oversubscribed. That's usually the only feedback that we get is the program is oversubscribed.
Thank you, Ms. Post. And I mean, I don't know if there's any public forum that you could bring forward the names of the individual or the companies that you speak of that are in need of employees, but if there's some type of public forum or online, possibly through a council meeting, you could give us some of the names of the people. It might be helpful for others to hear who's actually looking for employees. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Councillor McCaw. Anyone else? So I will call the question. All in favor? It's carried. We'll now move to consent items, where council may adopt consent items by one motion, but prior to consideration of such motion, members may request that specific items be removed from consideration under such motion, and council shall consider such items individually. So I will try to go through the table in my head. It's a little different on the screen, but starting with Councillor Kelly.
Yes, I'd like to pull 8CB.
So right now we're on 8B. So the first set of consent items? None? Okay. So Councillor Carr.
8B3, please.
8B3. Councillor Thompson.
8B3 again.
Okay. Councillor Sanderson.
Similar.
Councillor McCaw. I'm assuming no, thank you. Councillor Millette.
No, thank you.
Councillor Williams.
No, thank you.
Okay, so the motion is that the following agenda items be received, save, and accept item number 8B3. Motion for that, please. Moved by Councillor Sanderson, seconded by Councillor Thompson. All in favor. We'll go to 8B3, which is the open air burning regulation. It is the Deputy Fire Chief's report number 2021-02, and the resolution is that Deputy Fire Chief's report number FES 2021-02, open air burning regulation, be received. Moved by Councillor Carr, seconded by Councillor Sanderson. Councillor Carr, you asked for this item first to be pulled, so we'll start with you.
Yeah, thank you very much, and certainly appreciate the communications staff that have put out notice to the public to provide comment, and I see that the Deputy Fire Chief has received some comments back. Just generally in terms of advertising, I would highly recommend that we as a city consider print advertising as well. There's a free weekly that goes to every residence in the city. I think that's important, particularly for residents who don't have internet access or just choose not to use it. So just a couple questions on the report and then on the bylaw itself. Just in terms of comments received from the public, was there much adversity to open fires in more of the dense urban areas and proximity to neighbors, etc.?
So we have the privilege of having both the chief and one of the deputy chiefs with us. So I'll let you decide who wants to respond to Councillor Carr's question. Deputy Chief Patry, I see you've activated your microphone, and Chief McDonald's pointing to you, so go ahead.
Through you, your worship, to Councillor Carr. On the public comment, that there were a couple that were concerned about burning in adjacent properties. For the most part, though, burning in the urban area is well received, or is anticipated to be well received. Again, I go back to when we did the initial survey of the community, where we had some 721 respondents, I think. Through there, we were at about 90% in favor of burning in the urban core. Again, this recent comments, and there was only a small amount of comments. Some, again, were not necessarily opposed to burning in the urban area. They were just opposed to burning, period, because of migrating smoke.
Okay, thank you. And then another question I have, obviously, there's a definition here of adverse effect, means impairment of the safety of any person or ability to enjoy their property or premises, or damage to property. And I can imagine, particularly in the more dense urban areas, you may run into that, where one homeowner enjoys a campfire and the next homeowner 40 feet away doesn't particularly enjoy the smoke. So in those instances, what would happen?
That really is the crux of the matter. Sorry, through your worship, Councillor Carr, that really is the crux of the matter about the urban environment. I think one of the things that responding crews and investigations will have to determine whether or not, A, was the burning being done in compliance with the bylaw. We often get drawn into other neighbor disputes, and this just becomes a mechanism to ramp up that dispute. So we're going to have to make a determination while visually seeing the burning, whether or not it really is having an adverse effect on them. One of the goals that we were doing also was looking to limit the burning opportunities. So again, if you're having a family event in the afternoon and you were opposed to it, or perhaps a little more sensitive to the smoke, we were hopefully there would be some neighbors communication there, and maybe they wouldn't burn at that point in time. But again, being that both parties' rights are equal, it's a tough point to manage.
I see Chief McDonald wanted to add on to that. Go ahead, Chief.
Thank you, Your Worship, and for Councillor Carr and Council's consideration. Certainly, historically, we've always sort of dealt with burning, the burning issues of people having open air burning, and trying to make sure that it's done so it does not cause a nuisance to neighbors. Our former bylaw talked about Class A building materials, which could include, believe it or not, a car tire. So obviously that would be something that would emit a lot of smoke. So we were very specific about saying clean, dry, untreated wood. So that's not a bunch of scrap materials that you're burning, creating smoke. Limiting the size and putting it in a fire bowl in the urban setting with a spark arrestor, and the other issue of making sure that the burning doesn't take place, say, when people might have windows open or laundry out on the line. And there has been some questions about why we're talking about this 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. window. And that's actually a recommendation of the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry. And that's the way that they work inside the fire region. So when you go to our municipalities along the Highway 7 corridor that are in the fire region, or IFR as they call it, they really don't want the daytime burning because the winds are higher. You get nuisance smoke complaints because people say, oh, there's a fire down the street, but really it's 10 miles away, that type of thing. So we're trying to limit those hours to the social experience that people would have. And we now know more than ever that people appreciate the social aspect of their own backyard because of current restrictions. So this allows the evening campfire, the hot dog and marshmallow roast over clean dry wood, and people can enjoy the evening, but then it's extinguished in time to line up with the noise bylaw, which is 11 p.m.
Okay. And I certainly appreciate the work that the fire service has done with this bylaw. I know a lot of my questions have been centered around the urban area, and I think that's where you're going to run into more of the difficulties. I know, talking with some rural folks, they appreciate the fact that they're able to continue to burn leaves, and obviously from an agricultural perspective, farmers can continue to burn brush piles and things of that nature in order to assist with their farming operation. Getting back to just the one last question, when you show up and somebody's complaining about the adverse effect, there's a couple times in the bylaw which it says that it's the fire chief or designate. Is that intent then to make sure that whoever is responding to the complaint has the delegated authority of the fire chief to make a determination there on the spot, versus having to run it back up through the chain of command? I'm just I know it's kind of an operational question, but I think it's important because residents that may have a complaint are going to probably want to have some type of resolution right there at that moment in time, and some determination, and any delay could cause for enhanced or increased conflict that we probably want to try to avoid. So if someone can answer that.
Yeah. Yes, through your worship to Councillor Carr, absolutely. Anytime we have a response, the officer on scene that assumes command has the delegated authority of the fire chief, and historically we have made decisions and taken actions at scenes in the moment as the concern arises. So certainly it wouldn't be a red tape situation where people would have to go through a bunch of forms to get that resolution dealt with. It would be dealt with by the officer on scene, and if need be, a fire prevention officer may respond and do an investigation, which of course could lead to other issues contained within the bylaw. But certainly it does not require the chief or deputy to be on scene or to take action directly as a result of any complaint or concern.
And then in addition to that, there would be no requirement, say if it was either somebody responding, a crew, or if the fire prevention officer were to respond, there wouldn't be any requirement they could make a determination on the spot. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, they could.
Thank you.
Okay, anyone else on this item? Councillor Thompson.
Yeah, just Councillor Carr's already crossed a couple of them, but mine is more on the getting the information out to the public on the type of fire pits that are allowed in the urban area. Is it a pit that needs a screen cover on it and that's it? And being able to get it out to the public so that they know and how they're going to do that, maybe through the newsletter that goes out every 3 or 4 months, but specifically for the urban area, what type of equipment is allowed for the burn ban or for the burn?
Deputy Chief Patry, I think this one's for you.
Through your worship to Councillor Thompson. The intent was to include all appliances that are readily available at your local hardware store. So the critical component that's different between the urban and the rural is the urban has a necessity to have a spark arrestor. So you're not having a traditional campfire in the urban area.
Good.
If you wish to have a recreational burning in the urban area, the intent was you would have some type of device which would be equipped with a spark arrestor.
Okay, a spark arrestor. Now, can you explain that to me, what that is?
Yeah. So again, through you, your chair, to Councillor Thompson, the spark arrestor in essence is a steel screen that's over top of the fire bowl.
Okay. All right.
They come in various shapes. They're pyramids. Some are round. Some have screened on 4 sides. Some are a concave dome.
Good. No, that's good. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Anyone else on this item? Seeing none, I will call the question. All in favor? It's carried. So we'll now move to 8C, council information matters, where council may adopt consent items by one motion, but prior to consideration of such motion, members may request that specific items be removed from consideration under such motion, and council shall consider such items individually. Councillor Williams.
No, thank you.
Councillor Millette.
Yes, please. Item 8C1 sub D, please.
Okay. Councillor Thompson.
8C1C.
Councillor McCaw.
No, thank you.
Councillor Sanderson.
No, thank you.
Councillor Kelly. 8C1B, right?
Through you, your worship, 8CB. I think
Right.
you had it right. Yes.
Okay, so we're going to deal with all of them except for A. So that the following agenda items be received, save, and accept for 8C1B, C, and D. A motion by Councillor Carr, seconded by Councillor Millette, that they be received. All in favor? It's carried. We'll now move to the individual items. 8C1B, request the province prioritize children and childcare as part of an overall post-pandemic recovery plan, develop a plan to support facilities through the provision of licensed childcare and early learning education, and provide increased funding to childcare providers. It is the December 8th, 2020 resolution from the town of Carleton Place. Moved by Councillor Kelly, seconded by, need a seconder? Councillor Thompson. Councillor Kelly, this was your item. Go ahead.
Yes, I just hope we get the support tonight of the colleagues here at the meeting, and we know how important licensed childcare is in Ontario in particular. You're here for all the licensed care providers. It has been a tough go, increased costs for them, and we've seen the provincial government and federal government help other sectors here in the city. So we'd like to see the support tonight. Thanks to the crew in Carleton Place for sending this, and I'd like to have this letter, if it's supported tonight, that also be sent to Minister Todd Smith's office here in Belleville. So I'm 100% behind supporting licensed childcare providers.
All right, anyone else on this item? Not seeing anyone, I'll call the question. All in favor? It's carried. 8C1C, request the province to allow for small businesses to immediately reopen with the required health guidelines and protocols in place. It is the January 18th, 2021 resolution from the United Counties of Stormont, Dundas, and Glengarry. I believe Councillor Thompson, you had raised this, so you'll move it. I need a seconder on it. Councillor Carr, go ahead, Councillor Thompson.
Yes, I'm just pulling it just to at least receive it and make note of it. 2 weeks ago, we had a motion, I think it was 2 weeks ago, or it might have been a month ago, on supporting the small businesses opening. I just want to say that we have received it, we have noted it, and we're already in the process of supporting it from another jurisdiction. So,
okay, great, thank you. Anyone else on this? Councillor Carr.
Thank you. And anytime we can certainly support resolutions of this type, I think we should continue to do so. Again, not losing sight of the seriousness of the pandemic, but you know, as we continue to look at numbers across the province of Ontario, keeping in mind that the GTA and most jurisdictions in the GTA have been locked down since the 23rd of November. And I know that the province itself, we've kind of focused on what's occurred after Christmas and more recently with the declaration of emergency. But some of the GTA jurisdictions, particularly Toronto, Peel, things of that nature, have been locked down since the 23rd. Their numbers are just starting to move. And again, listening to the news, the Peel Medical Officer of Health has been advocating for more inspections into warehouses and manufacturing, things of that nature. And then when we look at our area, we look at the jurisdiction to the east of us, we continue to do very well. And we're maintaining the same numbers we had when we were in green and had businesses open and things of that nature. And so, you know, clearly as we move along, and I understand that the Toronto area is problematic in certain sectors, but at the same time I think the province was on the right track when they introduced their framework and had the different zones. They were based on the level of risk with those zones. And clearly there can be some maneuverability. I certainly hope that as we move and progress through this current declaration of emergency, that the province take a strong, hard look at those areas in which we've been doing extremely well. I know that Hastings Prince Edward Public Health put out some public announcements today. The 20 to 29 group seems to be the demographic where there is some concern. They're asking about you know, getting out and getting tested. There's concern about asymptomatic positive cases as well. And these are all measures and capacity that we've had and we've proven to have for 1 year almost with this pandemic. I can't say enough how well the Hastings Prince Edward Public Health has been able to manage the local risk as it's intended to. And so I don't want to belabor this, but certainly I'd like the province to look strong and hard at the different jurisdictions and base it on science, but base it on risk, which is also attributable to science. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Carr. Anyone else on this item? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? It's carried. 8C1D, requests province place an interim cap of 2.5 megatons per year on our gas plant and greenhouse gas pollution, and develop and implement a plan to phase out all gas-fired electricity generation to 2030 to ensure Ontario meets its climate targets. And it is a December 17, 2020 resolution from the Township of Laird. And I believe, if I'm correct, Councillor Millette, you had raised that? Thank you. Councillor Millette moves it. A seconder? Can I get a seconder for this, please? Councillor Thompson. Councillor Millette, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. And I would like to receive this strictly for the purposes of, well, two purposes, to get a clearer version than what we received in our printed agenda. I don't know if mine's just faded. I got the gist of it. As chair of the Green Task Force, I'd like to take this back to the Green Task Force, have a little more fulsome discussion on this. I know some of our neighboring municipalities, the city of Kingston for one, had quite a discussion on this matter. And I think this is grist for the discussion mill at the Green Task Force. So I would like to receive this and forward a good, clean electronic copy, if I could, on to our staff resource, Ms. McWhirter, and we'll take it up at the next Green Task Force meeting.
Okay, thank you. So the motion is to receive and refer to the Green Task Force. Anyone else discuss anything on this? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. So motion to rise and report. Can I get a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Sandison and Councillor Kelly. All in favor? It's carried. We'll now deal with bylaws, and we will do first reading of bylaws. And if it's possible, I'm just going to read the numbers. So bylaw number 2021-16, 17, 18, 19, and 20. Can I get a mover and a seconder for first reading, please? Moved by Councillor Millette, seconded by Councillor Sandison. All in favor? It's carried. Second reading of bylaws and discussion. Bylaws number 2021-12, 16, 17, 18, 19, and 20. Mover and a seconder, please. Moved by Councillor Carr, seconded by, I need a seconder, please. Councillor Williams. Any discussion on any of those items? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? It's carried. And third and final reading of bylaws 2021-12, 16, 17, 18, 19, and 20. Moved by Councillor Sandison, seconded by Councillor Thompson. All in favor? It's carried. All right, let's move to new business. And I have a couple items I just want to address first, and then we do have some new business items. You know, over the last number of months, I've started off new business with just making a quick update on the city of Belleville with respect to COVID. And so I want to take a moment right now to thank all of the residents of Belleville for adhering to the strict regulations that have been put in place by the government of Ontario. I'm so proud of our city and our region for being proactive and taking all of the proper protocols seriously. In terms of statistical performance, our region has remained one of the best health units in the entire province. As we move forward, we are all very hopeful that the restrictions in place may begin to be removed in our area based on our performance. We will wait an announcement from the provincial government as we reach this 28-day provincial shutdown end date. Belleville schools resumed in-class learning today, and this is another big step for our area. I am sure that many parents and children are very happy to be back at school. Just a reminder that children will be back on the streets walking to school, so motorists, please drive with care. As we say, give them a break, and please remember to stop for school buses. A few reminders to keep in mind over the coming days. Belleville City Hall remains open from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. by appointment only. If you require in-person services, please don't forget to book your appointment. The warming room has been activated several times this winter, including over the weekend and this coming week. A reminder that it is running out of the former Belleville Police Services building and is open from 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. While the stay-at-home directive is in effect, I would like to remind residents that all winter trails and parks are open. So we encourage you to take advantage of getting outside for some physical and mental exercise, including walks, hiking, etc. We must take care of ourselves during this difficult time. And as long as you respect all the safety protocols in place, we want you to enjoy your municipal facilities. I would also like to encourage everyone to visit our new and improved website and take advantage of the many online services that are offered. Just go to www.belleville.ca for all the information on the city of Belleville, including a page devoted to news about COVID-19 related issues. I have been trying to keep to weekly video updates on my Facebook page as well as a separate weekly update episode on your TV. Information on these video messages are also on the city website. We recognize that this is a difficult and stressful time for many in our city in many different ways. I want residents and businesses to know that your well-being is our highest priority. As a council, we remain collectively and singularly focused on your safety and health. Also under new business, I'd like to have a motion that bylaw number 2021-23, a bylaw to approve and authorize the sale of property by the Corporation of the City of Belleville to Dash Mesh Properties Limited, be read a first, second, and third time, and finally pass this 25th day of January 2021. And right before I get a mover and a seconder, I want to recognize Councillor McCaw. It wasn't on the agenda, so now is the opportune time to declare this a pecuniary interest.
Thank you, through you, Your Worship. I will declare this as an interest, as I believe one of the purchasers is someone that I have a business relationship with. So if I could at this point in time, declare that interest and be removed from the meeting.
Right, before you get removed. Okay, so there's two, we'll be dealing with two bylaws, this one and then the subsequent one, and then we'll bring Councillor McCaw afterwards. So the bylaw that I just introduced, I'm looking for a mover and a seconder of it, please. So this is Councillor Sandison, second by Councillor Millette. So this deals with the Ben Bleecker property. And this item is the northern portion of the property. It's about more or less 4 acres. It is going to be bought by a company called Dash Mesh Properties. They are local business people. They are currently the owners and the builders of the Arabella retirement home on Dundas Street. And their intended use for this facility is residential in terms of high density rental accommodation, so apartment buildings in this area. Anyone have any questions or comments they want to make on this item? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? It's carried. Thank you, colleagues. So the next item is bylaw number 2021-24, a bylaw to approve and authorize the sale of property by the corporation of the city of Belleville to Goldmanco Incorporated. Be read a first, second, and third time, and finally passed this 25th day of January 2021. Can I please get a mover and a seconder? So this is the one that Councillor McCaw has the real conflict on. So if we'll just get you back out again, Councillor McCaw, and then we'll bring you as soon as I finish this. So just wait for her to. Okay, thank you. Mover and a second, Councillor Kelly, seconded by Councillor Carr. So this is the south portion of the property where the Ben Bleecker building was. This one is about more or less 3 acres, and it is being bought by Goldmanco Incorporated. They are also the owners of the Shoppers Drug Mart Plaza on the southwest portion of that Bridge Street and Sydney Street intersection. They are, I believe it's called the Loyalist Shopping Center, and they are purchasing this property for a food retail establishment as well as a grocery store type of operation. And I neglected to say the previous bylaw, Dash Mesh Properties, was purchasing that property for about $200,000 per acre. So that would be $800,000 for the other one. This one here is a purchase price of $500,000 per acre for approximate price of $1.575 million. The motion is on the table. Anyone have any questions or comments about this? So I will call the question. All in favor? It's carried. And then just the last thing to talk about on this, the city has made an undertaking with respect to the severance of that property as well as rezoning to allow it to be used for the intended use, and we still have that item to deal with. New business, Councillor Williams, I know you have an item that you wanted to bring up. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Your Worship. So on the small business theme again, that Councillor Thompson has been adamant on, as COVID-19 moves along in 2021 and the lockdown continues, small businesses are the ones that are suffering. It's the lifeblood of this community, small business, and we really need to pay mind to it and to those people that work there and to those that own that. No more proof is needed than to see the list of donors for the Belleville General Hospital Foundation, sponsors for our minor league hockey teams, and so on. Small business has been asked to close and only open for curbside pickup only during this lockdown phase. And other governments are able to do much more for these businesses than we are. However, the city can. Now, just an example, the Ontario government last week recently offered a relief to the Ontario Small Business Support Grant of up to $20,000. And I can tell you, I know both Councillor Millette, myself, and CAO Bove are attending Roma today and tomorrow, and this is a major hot topic. I know tomorrow at 8:00 a.m. There will be a lot of questions that will be answered around how municipalities are helping small business. And I know that through Belleville, I want that to be the same, that we're doing all we can, even though our options are limited. I'd like to make sure we're doing all we can at this time. I know last year when we looked at doing some help to deferrals of taxes, which is something we can do, we'd already passed our interim tax measures. and we haven't done that yet, but talking to Director Hines, I know that Director Hines indicated we have the ability to defer our installment dates by 1 month, which may not be a lot, but during this lockdown, supposedly to end on around February 15th, I believe that is something that if implemented today, that would be a big help to many different councillors, or sorry, many different businesses, maybe councillors at the end of the day. So I'd like to make a motion to defer our payments, our interim payments from February 24th to March 29th, and from April 28th to May 27th, which effectively adds 1 month to each payment date. That hopefully can do a little bit to help small businesses in the interim, and will not do anything to take away from the operations we have for the city of Belleville.
Okay, so the first installment that's scheduled for the end of February would be moved to the end of March. And then the second installment that is normally collectible at the end of April would be extended until the end of May.
That's right. And just to be clear, this is for all taxpayers, not just businesses, but this would also benefit businesses.
So this would be for everyone. And we did this similarly in the springtime during the first wave, where we deferred all taxes to people. There will be no interest or penalties during that time. Of course, we encourage those who can to pay on time, because the city still has bills, but we would push that back. So so what we'll do, Councillor Williams, is that because currently we already have tax levy due dates, so we need to change that. So bylaw number 2021-22, a bylaw to amend bylaw number 2020-23, being a bylaw to provide for the implementation and collection of an interim tax levy for 2021, be ready first, second, and third time, and finally pass this 25th day of January 2021. That's moved by Councillor Williams, seconded by, can I get a seconder, please? Councillor Thompson. So thank you very much, Councillor Williams. You've tied that up, and we had some conversations last week in terms of trying to deal with this, and I look forward to hearing what the conversation is tomorrow. You know, we're doing everything we can to help our residents and businesses during these difficult times, and we are the level of government that has the least financial capacity in terms of the taxation powers of all levels. And I think that what needs to be said here is that, you know, it's nice to see that grant that the province is giving us, but we really need the federal government to recognize this second wave as well. They're actually doing less for us now than they did in the springtime. You know, there are wage subsidies in place, there are rent subsidies in place, but those require businesses still to pay. For example, on the rent subsidy side, the maximum that a business can qualify for is 65%, which means that they still have to come up with the 35% of that. And they're now in a situation in many parts of Ontario and in our region where they're closed. So they're getting zero income and they're still expected to pay 35% rent. The same goes with the wage subsidy. You know, you only get wage subsidy if you pay it, pay those wages, and then you only get a portion of it back. Meanwhile, businesses are struggling either with severely reduced revenue amounts or none whatsoever. And when I say that the federal government is doing less today than they were in the springtime, that's because in the springtime, they at least allowed businesses not to remit their HST, to allow them to have that cash flow freedom or that assistance during that time, which made a big difference. They actually allowed them, I believe, until the end of August to get fully caught up on that, to allow them that time. That's not happening now. So, you know, we're doing what we can, and I know that these 2 months of deferred time will make a big difference to a number of businesses that are really, really struggling. But we need to recognize that we're not out of the woods yet, that the first wave, as serious as it was, it's just as, if not more serious this time. And there are businesses that are really, really struggling. So I will, you know, wholeheartedly support the resolution. And I call on, you know, tomorrow, you and Councillor Millette, and I believe Councillor Kelly, that are attending the conference. You know, certainly I hope you hear some good news about the province understanding that this $20,000 grant they're giving is great, but it's not enough to keep many businesses to going, and we want them to survive. So, you know, I'm going to wholeheartedly support this. Anyone else have anything like to say on this item? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Williams. Anyone else for new business? All right, seeing none, we will now move to.
Excuse.
So sorry, I missed you. Go ahead, Councillor Sanderson. New business.
Yeah, thank you. Through the chair, just one item that I want to bring up, and that's the public transit expansion. So expansion of public transit across our community has been a key priority for the Transit Operations Advisory Committee. And I'm sort of pleased to share with the group that we're on track to introduce what I'll describe as full regular service for the urban area of Ward 2. And we're currently looking at the May-June timeframe for implementation. So based on survey that we conducted back in 2019, actually, the management staff have developed a proposed 30-minute fixed route that would see service expanded to Hamptons Ridge, Maitland Drive, Farnham Road, Simcoe Drive, and Canafton North. So it would be, the service would operate from the Quinte Mall hub through the areas identified and also swing through Walmart as well. And it will come forward to council for approval through the operating budget in the March timeframe. And if approved, funding could come from provincial gas tax for the first full year of service because it is an expansion. But beyond that, residents would be required to, to fund public transit just as we do in other areas of the city, and that would be through property taxes or some other means. And the transit management will be conducting a public information session to solicit feedback, as well as through their normal communication channels. So I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Councillors Carr and Millette, our committee members, and the staff for their efforts in support of the expansion of our public transit. Thank you.
Great, Councillor Sanderson, and thank you to members of the committee as well. And we look forward to having that come to our operating budget and then seeing that expansion of that service. Anyone else new business? Okay, so we'll now move to motions. And Councillor Thompson, I'll recognize you. You provided a notice of motion at the last meeting on January the 11th. If you can just reread your notice of your motion, and then I'll ask for a seconder. This is on a reconsideration item. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. The motion, I will read it out. Pursuant to the Municipal Procedural Bylaw 2019-48, Section 4.4, bracketed 1, I give notice of motion to reconsider reconsider the motion of appointing 7th place individual on the 2018 Ward 1 ballot, Mr. Tyler Offsup, to the vacant council seat. And I have a seconder, Councillor Carr has offered to second that for me.
Yep, so go ahead, sir.
Once we get it on the floor, I got a few notes.
It's on the floor. Go ahead, Councillor Thompson. So on the notice of reconsideration, the mover is the only member permitted to speak, followed by we will have a vote that requires a 2/3 majority of council. If it's successful, then there'll be an opportunity to introduce a motion. And then if it's seconded, there will be opportunity for all members of council to discuss it. So Councillor Thompson, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. I present this motion as a feeling strongly that this is the proper way to go. A number of the citizens have spoken in support of taking the next person from the election results from the 2018 municipal election, of which the person is Tyler Alsop. We have heard through emails, text, phone calls, and we've received a petition with many signatures on it wanting to go in this direction. I want to thank the many people that have contacted the mayor and fellow councillors and myself with the thoughts of the one way they wanted to go. And this seemed to be the overall response from most people that they wanted to go with the next one in line. As a councillor, and even before I was elected, I can never remember a subject that was drawn so much attention by the taxpayers on the city of Belleville, which I commend them. That means they're watching and listening to our council meetings and they're paying attention. And that's what we want from our taxpayers. I ask this council that is representing the taxpayers of the city of Belleville to support this reconsideration motion for the appointment of the next in line on the ballot of the 28 election results, which by that name was Tyler Alsop. And I'd ask for a recorded vote.
Okay, so Councillor Thompson has asked for a recorded vote. This is a reconsideration motion, which is to reconsider the decision that council made on December the 14th. As I said, if it doesn't get the required 6, then the motion is defeated and it cannot be brought forward for a minimum of 1 year. If it does receive the required 6 votes or more, then Councillor Thompson will introduce a motion that we will then debate. So, Mr. McDonald, when you're ready, you can take the call.
Councillor Thompson,
Yes.
Councillor Williams,
Yes.
Councillor Carr,
Yes.
Councillor Kelly,
Yes.
Councillor Millette,
Yes.
Councillor McCaw,
No.
Councillor Sanderson,
Yes.
Mayor Panchuk,
Yes.
motion carries.
Motion carries. So Councillor Thompson, you're able to introduce a motion at this point. I know we spoke about the wording about it on last week, so go ahead now, sir.
Yes, and I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to present this motion. We did speak last week, and now I would like to make sure I thank all the councillors for supporting my last motion, and we're moving on in a new direction in our city. The motion is that Mr. Tyler Alsop be appointed to fill the vacancy on city council for the remaining term of this council. I
understand that Councillor Carr, and I understand that Councillor Carr is seconding it. So go ahead, Councillor Thompson. You can speak to this motion now if you want.
Yes, please. Again, very short notes. We've come a long ways. And if council wants to go in a different direction and choosing a person to fill a vacancy, then let's change the rules for the next 2022 election. As I said during the last motion, that the people have spoken out loud and in most cases, they want to say who fills that seat if left vacant for whatever reason by a councillor during that 4-year term. They have spoken overly well on us. And again, as I said before, this is very important to the public that they have a say who is going to be taking the next position. That may not always be the next in line. It certainly could be a by-election, but that place gives them their choice. I feel that Mr. Tyler Alsop will make a good addition to this council. I think the city needs to look at the wording in our bylaws or the municipal bylaws and look at the future wording to this effect and how we're going to deal with it in future elections on a vacancy so that we don't end up in this situation where it was very uncomfortable for the council. And I'd ask for people to support this, and I ask for a recorded vote.
Thank you. Anyone else like to discuss this matter? Councillor Sanderson.
Thank you, Your Worship. And I'd like to thank Councillor Thompson for bringing the motion forward. There are many ways to appoint someone to a council vacancy, and all of them are democratic. But as was done here 15 years ago, there's been overwhelming public support for appointing the next in line council candidate to a seat vacancy, when it occurs. I received approximately 60 emails and about 20 phone calls from residents in both Ward 1 and Ward 2 since our December 14th council meeting. I certainly was encouraged by the level of engagement, and I thanked each and every one of them for sharing their views with me. And I want to take this opportunity to publicly thank them as well. It is, using their words, the next in line who should be appointed each and every time there is a vacancy on council. And the message that that was constant throughout those emails and those phone calls was that it was about having their vote count and respecting their participation in the election process. So with that, I will be supporting the motion to appoint the next in line candidate, Mr. Olsop. And if he's appointed, I offer him my congratulations and welcome him to council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sanderson. Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Your Worship. You know, Winston Churchill once said that democracy is the worst form of government except for all others that have been tried. And democracy can be messy. Not everyone votes. Not everyone elected wins every vote taken. Democracy can be perilous, as we saw south of the border 2 weeks ago. It can hang on a thread, and democracy can be loud, as we heard from our constituents over the last 5 weeks. But democracy should never be optional. And I'm glad that today it seems we'll be listening to the people and putting the 7th place finisher voted by the people of Belleville into that position. I'm happy for all the reasons given by some around council. And should we follow this precedence, and should there be another vacancy around this horseshoe for Ward 1 or Ward 2 or whatever happens before the end of 2022, that it would, based on this decision, be offered and be filled by the next available person. And of course, the next one after Tyler Ossopp was Carol Feeney, a woman, and I think that would be a win-win. But more importantly, I'm buoyed by the fact that we had more people, it seemed, now interested in politics and in running in the next election in 2022 more than ever before. And that is the best thing we can have happen for our city and democracy. I know that out of this, depending on the vote, and hopefully this goes through today, that we do have some sort of action that looks to those that were involved putting their name forward either for committees or again, that we look at barriers that exist perhaps right now in council that limits some people from being able to run for these positions. And I think that's very important. But I'm very happy where we are. I think this is a great decision and this is a win for democracy. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Anyone else? Councillor Millette.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm going to be brief. I don't in any way, shape, or form want to use this opportunity to get into the "I told you so" portion of this whole discussion, but I just wanted to remind that back December 14, when we first broached this process that we were going down this road, I told the council and the city that I dreaded that meeting because of what it was going to put this council and this city through. And I think we've just seen the last 2 months, or the last month at least, that it's not covered us in glory. Let's put it that way. I am happy to see that finally, after we've been through an awful lot of angst, we've seen record numbers that I've ever seen in terms of voters reaching out to their councillors, that we've come to the right decision. But I just want to make one point that at the beginning of this process, picking the next in line was said to be an easy way out, or it's just the lazy way out. What picking the next in line does, and what it is doing now, it avoids the kind of thing we just went through over the last month, whereby there's perceptions that this shouldn't have happened in that regard. The next in line affects, or it reflects, I'm sorry, the wishes of the voters of this city. And for that reason, I'm going to support this, and I am going to welcome Tyler Alsop to Belleville Council, a young man who I spent election night with in October 2018, when I urged him to keep at it. And he was pretty crushed young man at that point. I'm certainly hoping I'll see a more buoyant young man when he walks into the chambers next we see him. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Black. Councillor Carr.
Thank you. I won't take too long here. I just want to thank Councillor Thompson for introducing the reconsideration motion. I also want to thank each resident who took the time to call, email, message, or post their thoughts on social media. I've received dozens and dozens of phone calls and hundreds of emails over the past couple of months, over the last 60 days. And then we also received a petition with a considerable number of Belleville residents that were supportive of this. Speaking out and sharing their views is welcomed and appreciated, and it makes the job of representing the people of Belleville that much easier by hearing from them. As I mentioned previously, I've been in this situation before back in 2002, and it can be said, and it was said today, that appointing the next on the ballot to a vacant seat is easy, non-controversial, and even lacking creativity. Perhaps it is, but what I'm certain it does do is it achieves democracy, and it demonstrates that voters from 2018 continue to have a voice and that their votes continue to matter. I voted in favor of this motion on December 14th, and I've remained steadfast in my view that a democratic process, either by appointing the next on the ballot or conducting a by-election, should be followed. It's fundamental to our democracy, and therefore I will wholeheartedly support this motion today. As I said, we as members of council don't own these seats. We occupy this office, and we have a seat because we let our names stand. But more importantly, the residents evaluated us, selected us, and gave us the privilege to be here. And with that privilege, we're to serve them. And our fundamental job is to represent and work for all residents of this great city. The discussion over the past couple of months has highlighted flaws in the Municipal Act as it relates to filling a vacant position. It is also has the community and members of council, including myself, reviewing systemic barriers to greater involvement in municipal governance. These are worthy considerations to have and work towards solutions, whether it is advocating for changes to the Municipal Act, to things that we can review locally, perhaps changing meeting times that cater to the public at large, or create an election fund for those who require monetary assistance for a campaign. It's important that we hear from those that have experienced these barriers to involvement. These are valuable discussions that we can have with the community in the days ahead. But in the meantime, I wholeheartedly support the motion on the floor.
Thank you very much. Anyone else on this item? Councillor Kelly? Councillor Thompson, I'll let you speak last again. So just Councillor Kelly, go ahead.
All right, through you, Your Worship. Thanks to Councillor Thompson for bringing this back to the table. I do look forward to working with Tyler Alsop as the new councillor. You know, we've all learned, I think, as Councillor Millette touched on, this was quite the ride for the last 6 weeks. I think we've all learned. And what I've taken from it, what I experienced was the engagement that the residents had. And in no way was I feeling that we could slide this through. That was never my intent. And my intent was to have a more inclusive, diverse city. And we need in the next 2 years to build those relationships. And I've realized now with conversations with so many in the last 6 weeks that at least my goals for the city, it's a marathon and not a sprint. And we had interest in the committee with 19 individuals. And I believe the numbers were 13 women showed interest. So that's a step in the right direction. We have to give equal opportunity for everyone in our city for true representation. And the conversations I had, I mean, there might be a sense from others that this was all bad and people were angry and ready to fight. And I was afraid to go to the grocery store or being out in public in the last 6 weeks. That was never the case. The conversations I had, people were respectful. They understood where I was standing on it. But at the end of the day, it is the seat of the residents. And I respect that. That's democracy. But they do understand that we have work ahead of us to be a more inclusive city, to represent everyone. And I know as the inclusion chair for the next 2 years, that's part of my goal. I've already started the outreach already with great conversations with leaders that want to get us to the next level for more understanding community. So I'm looking forward to the future for the next 2 years with Tyler, and we've got some work out ahead of us, and I know he'll be there to certainly help out. So there's been some positive, lots of positive come at least for me for growth with this process. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor McCaw.
Thank you, through your worship. I'll be voting against the appointment of Tyler Alsop for the reasons I've stated previously. I realize I'm going to be standing alone on this matter, and it hasn't been the first time, it won't be the last. I feel better to stand alone for what I believe in rather than stand with others for what I don't. I voiced my concerns previously, and I don't think I need to repeat the concerns. It's not a personal decision, but rather I would consider it a business decision. And Mr. Alsop need not suggest I offer any animus towards him, because that simply isn't the case. I was placed on this committee by the mayor to come back with a recommendation that would reflect diversity. I didn't form the committee. I didn't ask to be on the committee. I was just appointed to it like I am every other committee. For me, filling the council seat was always about finding a qualified, like municipally engaged person first, with diversity at a distant second. I wanted to ensure the best person was recommended for that seat. As such, you know, I was pleased to see both men and women applied and were fully examined. Since I was appointed the chair of the ad hoc committee for those reasons of diversity, I'd say the following in defense of the process. I learned much about the barriers women face, as well as those who identify as minority and what they face as well. I was once there myself and remember it well. It was intimidating. It was quite an intimidating experience. This time we actually had 19 applicants, very similar to when I ran. I think there was 20 or 21 back in 2014. Each one of these applicants had differing backgrounds. There are some positives to be taken from this process, but there are also some ugly truths that I encountered and never expected, and really wish I didn't have to talk about. The worst is what I learned is there are still people out there who discriminate against women and attempt to intimidate them. I feel some cases extend here as well. These instances of harassment are not isolated. They're not one-offs. You know, I deep down believe that maybe there are some council members who couldn't be happier they turned down an excellent applicant despite diversity, while other members feel the appearance of diversity is simply good enough. The committee brought forward the best of both worlds from my perspective. They brought an excellent candidate who not only was engaged with the city previously, but she was also qualified and was a woman. She was never given a chance or an opportunity because 5 individuals, 3 of which sit on the Belleville Inclusion Committee, would not even vote to accept in a report that bore her name. This wasn't a report asking to vote for her. It was simply a report bringing forth her name. And I'm going to name her right now because I think she deserves to be named. Her name is Jennifer McTavish, and she did everything right. She did the work, she immersed herself in city committees, and she was engaged in her community and has been for as long as I've been on council. I remember her off of the Accessibility Advisory Committee. She didn't do it with an expectation of a council seat. She did it because she cared about her community. She demonstrated her engagement in many ways outside the city committee work. And she deserves some consideration. For that, I quite frankly feel disappointed about that. There are a few words that are ringing loudly right now in my mind, and they come from a fellow councillor. It's one thing to intend equality. It's another thing to take action and make it happen. I believe it's time for change. I want it now. I would argue that change is tomorrow, not now in the city of Belleville. And we know that tomorrow never comes. With all the unspoken now spoken, whatever the course of this council, unlike others, I'm truly committed to work with whoever
fills the council seat. And I'm further committed to continue to advance the business of the city. But I would say this to Jennifer McTavish: I hope to see your name on a ballot in 2022. Never give up. Never, ever give up. And to the other applicants, I do the same. And I can't remember whether Councillor Thompson mentioned it or not, but I would like a recorded vote. Thank you.
Yeah, there will be a recorded vote. Thank you very much. Councillor Thompson will speak last, and so I will just offer my comments now. Thank you very much, colleagues. I have listened intently to all the comments made on this issue from members of council and also from the public as well. And there have been many good points made on this issue. And, you know, while some want to say that this should be an easy decision, you know, it's only an easy decision if you choose to ignore other points of view and just consider your own personal position. I have been clear from the very beginning that it was never about Tyler Allsap for me. He is a pleasant, intelligent, well-spoken individual who I recommended to many people that they should vote for in 2018. I am now prepared to enthusiastically vote for him to fill this vacancy after having made the effort to seek the best decision for our community. Today, we will make a decision and we will comply with the requirements of the Municipal Act. And we're going to carry on and do our work just as we have for the past 25 months. We will continue to conduct the business of the city for the benefit of all of our residents and our collective future. I've heard a lot from people who say that they believe in equality, that they believe in equity, they believe in diversity, but that they also believe in the tradition of appointing the runner-up. In this case, it's a contradiction which leads to further underrepresentation of important segments of our community. So, what will we do as an 8-and-1 council, 8 men, 1 woman, to demonstrate that we are representing the 51% of our population with only 1 female occupying only 11% of the seat totals at the council table? The voice of the women of our community is a diverse one. It is not reasonable to suggest that 1 member of council can somehow represent it on her own. The question we must consider is, how will we ensure that important and sizable voice is not just heard here, but is also present in our decisions? You know, a lot of words have been said on this issue. You know, it's an important one for sure, but it is also important to consider what has not been said. I have not heard anyone talk about what happens after today. Filling this vacancy will result in an 8 male and 1 female composition of council. This will be the first time since 1977 that we've only had 1 female on Belleville City Council. What will we do, colleagues, to ensure the voice, perspective, values, and aspirations of the diversity of our community are included here at the council table? That is the challenge for all of us. That is what comes next after all the words have been spoken. This can't be the end of it until the next election. Over the course of the weekend, I heard from a resident who provided a statistical analysis to me, which showed that based on our current electoral trends, it will take another 83 years to achieve gender parity. Just reminds me, words won't change those trends. Deliberate actions are what is necessary if we believe in equality, equity, and diversity. For me, I will continue to show that it is not just words on my part. I will continue to back up my words with my actions. Residents expect this from all of us. Councillor Thompson, I'll recognize you to wrap up, and then I'll have the recorded vote.
Thank you, Your Worship, and I will make it very short. I respect the decisions, the talk from the different community people, and in a lot of these situations, there was a lot of women that contacted us wanting this what they called a democratic thing of system of taking the next in line. So it wasn't just men. And Yes, it is a big thing for us to make sure that we have women represented on our council. But we have no choice in that, because when it comes to election time, it's the voters that vote the people in. Now, unfortunately, this time, the next in line, unfortunately, with passing of Councillor Pat Culhane being a female, we're taking a male on. It's not shifting that to multiple women on that panel, but we don't have that choice even during the election. The people have that choice. And we hope that we as a council and you as the mayor continue to be diversified. Like I chaired the inclusion committee for 8 years. I felt that we were doing some great work, making sure the vast majority of the people in this city were represented in whatever way they wanted. Our job now will be to make sure our committees are diversified. We, as a council and a mayor, now have to say, we went through a bit of a trial period. We now have to move on, work together as one, and accomplish what the citizens of this city want us to do. And they want a lot out of our city. They want a lot out of us as councillors and you as the mayor. And we can only do that together as one. And if we work together as one, we can accomplish a lot. And right now, we're going to take a system here. We may make some decisions before the 22 election of how we address this again. But right now, the choice was to take the next in line. I was the next in line back a number of years ago. I feel very proud that I was picked for that. I hope since that time that I've made a difference in this city. And I expect Tyler Alsop will make a difference. We need to be diversified, but we also need to work together as one. And I thank you very much for the opportunity to bring this motion today. And I hope for, if not an 8 or 7-1, very close to that.
All right, thank you, Councillor Thompson. Mr. McDonald, when you're ready, you can call the question.
Councillor Williams.
Yes.
Councillor Carr.
Yes.
Councillor Kelly.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes. Councillor Millette.
Yes.
Councillor McCaw.
No.
Councillor Sanderson.
Yes.
Councillor Thompson.
Yes.
Mayor Panchak.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, congratulations to, now as soon as he gets sworn in, Councillor Tyler Alsop. We will now move to, are there any notice of motions tonight? Then we'll move to announcements. Anyone have any announcements they'd like to make this evening? Councillor Carr.
Thank you. I'll be holding a virtual town hall on Thursday, March the 25th at 6:30. And to register, send an email to me, councillor.carr@belleville.ca. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else for announcements? All right, Councillor Kelly. Councillor Kelly, go ahead.
Through you, Your Worship. I just wanted to mention that Thursday is a big day in the country. It's the Bell Let's Talk Day, and all of us can play a role in creating positive change. And Bell Canada, they have a community fund, and they help out locally over the years with grants in the range of $5,000 to $25,000 towards mental health initiatives. And I do know that Food for Thought, the last was a couple of years ago, they had a guest speaker. I know Bell Let's Talk Day has helped out Matt DeMille, Ruth Estwick, and Canadian Mental Health, Sandy Sidward, their team as well, been involved with Food for Thought. So on Thursday, do your part. You can raise money and help draw awareness and end the stigma about mental health. And money does come back locally and helps out programs that we have here in Belleville. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay, I have a couple proclamations and some announcements as well. So first of all, I'd like to proclaim January as Alzheimer's Awareness Month in the city of Belleville. And I ask that all residents help me in spreading the word to encourage awareness of this very important cause. I'd also like to proclaim Thursday, January the 28th as Bell Let's Talk Day in the city of Belleville. This day is very important in our city and across the entire country. I ask that all residents of Belleville take the time to recognize this day and help raise awareness as we try to remove the stigma that is attached to mental health. The Bell Let's Talk flag will be flown at the Quinte Sports and Wellness Center. In terms of announcements, it's my pleasure to announce that Jennifer Lyons is the new manager of museum services for the city of Belleville and the head curator for Glanmore National Historic Site. Ms. Lyons has been hired to fill the vacancy created by the retirement of long-term city employee Rona Rustage. It's my pleasure to welcome Jennifer to the City of Belleville team, and we look forward to working with her. I would also like to remind residents again that ice on parts of the Bay of Quinte is still very unsafe. Currents make it uneven and dangerous. Please use extreme caution and continue to avoid the Bay Area. No ice fishing, skating, etc. at this point. But I am pleased to announce that the Victoria Harbor ice is now thick enough to open for skating. City staff have tested the ice and have started to clear safe sections. Please only use the areas where it has been cleared and has been checked. Ice in other areas of the bay will continue to be monitored, and we will let the public know when it is safe. If you are not sure, please stay off the ice. Losing another life is just not worth the risk. I was pleased to present the Grace Inn Homeless Shelter here in Belleville with a $50,000 check this past Thursday. The City of Belleville is a proud supporter of the shelter and we are thankful for the need that they are fulfilling in our community. And we are all proud that this year's donation now brings us up to $148,000 in cash donations to this facility from the City of Belleville since it first opened. I invite everyone to stay tuned as we make a significant contribution to the construction of a new facility for Hospice Quinte later this week. These are important organizations doing important work for our community, and we are happy to support them. Vaccines have started to be administered in our region. Westgate Lodge received 79 doses last Sunday, January the 17th. Last week, Hastings Manor also had the staff and residents vaccinated, bringing our totals in our city to almost 400 people. Thank you very much to our tremendous staff at the Hastings Prince Edward Health Unit, as well as the Hastings County paramedics that have made this possible. Earlier this evening, we passed a resolution to make one of our rinks at the Quinte Sports and Wellness Center available as a vaccine site once we get to the mass inoculation stage. Stay tuned for more information as it becomes available. Congratulations to the winners of the Home for the Holidays decorating contest. 9 winners in total for making a Christmas as good as it could be this year in these COVID times. I want to thank the Belleville Chamber of Commerce for organizing, and Crime Stoppers also for contributing cash prizes along with the City of Belleville. And the last thing I'd like to say is a big thank you to all of our residents. Today is the 1-year anniversary since the first case of COVID-19 presented here in Ontario. Since then, we have been through a lot. We are winning this war against this virus. Let's continue to care for each other with patience and love. And with that, I will ask for a confirmatory bylaw, that bylaw number 2021-21, a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council at its meeting held on January 25th, 2021, be read a first, second, and third time, and finally passed this 25th day of January 2021. Can I get a mover, please? Moved by Councillor Millette, seconded by Councillor Kelly. All in favor, it's carried. And a motion to adjourn, moved by Councillor Carr, seconded by Councillor Kelly. All in favor, it's carried. Thank you.
A few minutes after the meeting, Mitch.
Yeah, I've got, Councillor Thompson, I've got a couple of media things to do, and then I'll give you a call when I have a moment. Yeah. Thanks, everybody. Good evening. Tim Meeks. If you want to activate your microphone, if you're still with us. You'll have the scoop on Ben Bleecker property. Hello, Tim. I can't hear you yet. I'd have to.
Hello?
Go ahead. I hear you now.
Oh, no, it's David Foote. I'm not sure why this says Tim Meeks.
You're up as Tim Meeks, so you're going to get the scoop, but you're only going to have the scoop on Ben Bleecker. So
sure.
Or if that's the unless you have questions you want. So
I mean, I have a few things I could ask about. Actually, just 1 second here. All right. Well, let's start with the Ben Bleecker thing. Obviously, some good news to finally get some, not only development in that, that hot spot, if you will, but it sounds like part of that plan will be for something that I think residents in that part of the city have been calling for quite some time in a grocery store type of development.
For a long, long time. That is probably that's an understatement in terms of they've been calling it for some time, and so many of them. We used to have an A&P a long time ago where the Shoppers Drug Mart is now, and ever since it left, that's really been an underserviced part of the city. And we've been working hard, and we've seen some ups and downs on it. I'm really excited. We basically have severed that lot in half. To the north part, it's going to be residential. We're going to have rental accommodations, which we really need in the city. It's a perfect place, especially with all the development that will be happening on the other side of Sydney Street. But on the south part of that, in addition to some type of a food service location, the plan for this company is to build a grocery store. And we're looking forward to it. Obviously, they've still got some work to do. The city's made an undertaking to them to complete that severance work, and also to redo the zoning to allow for the use for both of these purchasers. But we've done well financially on that property, and I think it just sets up us to reconstruct that intersection. It's going to be more jobs for the community, more services, future tax revenue for the city, because we weren't getting anything there. It allows us to finish that road work in terms of the widening of Bridge Street as well as Sydney Street, and it's a good news story all around.
And it was 800,000 for the northern part and 1.575 million for the southern.
Correct. Total of 2.375.
Great. Do you know what the timeline is like on either of those?
Well, ASAP, but a lot of things have been impacted by COVID. One of the challenges we had that took so long was getting some environmental permits from the Ministry of the Environment for Goldmanco in particular. And so I'd like to say that they are going to be going as quickly as possible. I expect that we will start to see some activity on the site before the end of the year.
Great. Also had questions about obviously the council appointment, and it's been talked about now for obviously weeks and weeks and weeks. And as Councillor Millette said, I don't think there's any need to get into any of the argumentative sides of things. But is it nice to, I guess, have this settled now and be able to move forward with things somewhat as usual?
Absolutely. And I said during my comments that people thought that it was an easy decision. It wasn't, because we would have gotten outcry no matter what we would have decided. Had we not appointed Tyler Alsap, who ran in the last election, obviously we heard a lot of people who thought that might not happen. But we are going to hear from members of the community in the future when issues of sexism in the city, not just with the city of Belleville, but in the city exist, or racism like we have in the past, and they will point to the lack of diversity on city council. And so we're going to have to deal with that at some point. But the reality is, government is the process that we go through. But I challenge my colleagues today that we have to make sure that not just our voices and the voices that look like us are represented, but also those folks in the city that don't see their voices represented around the council table.
And regardless of where councillors fell on the decision itself, it seemed everybody was in agreement that the level of public engagement on this was a good thing, and everybody seemed pleased about people in the city getting involved in what's going on.
Yeah, that's quite interesting, isn't it? There were folks that really didn't like the process, didn't like the ad hoc committee. Council was deadlocked. There was no chance that council would have supported a committee to consider applications. But in the end, now we say, well, that was a good thing, because we had 19 people apply, 13 of which were females. Those are significant increases since the last election. We had people that represent the diversity of not just gender, but also race, orientation, physical capabilities, youth, and also a variety of new residents of the city and long-term residents. So, in the end, I know that some people haven't liked the way this occurred, but we got to where we needed to be. We've appointed Tyler Allsap to the position on council, but at the same time, we've identified the real shortcomings we have with our system. And I hope that as a result, you'll see not just more people run in the next election, but a more reflective council elected.
Do we know when he would be sworn in?
We will be sworn in before the council meeting on the 8th of February. I don't know the date. I'll be giving him a call here shortly, David. But I can tell you that had we actually taken advantage of the opportunity last Wednesday and done the reconsideration motion then, Tyler would have been Councillor Allsap today, and he would have participated in today's meeting.
Right. Okay. And the last thing I have is just a little bit off topic. There were some OCIF funds that got handed out today. Just curious if they've been allocated yet, or if they'll just go into reserve for now.
They will go into reserves. So those are infrastructure. They're required for infrastructure. The point I would make is that since 2015, those funds have gone up by 424%, which is a substantial increase. We're really, really grateful to the provincial government for that allocation. It's so important. We're going to use it, and we'll use it all, and we'll use it quickly. But I just want to say those, we need the help of the provincial and federal governments to help us with our infrastructure needs. And today's announcement is one of those steps along the way.
That's great. That's all I had.
Okay. Thanks, David.
Thanks, Mitch.
Welcome to the City Council beat.
Thank you very much. Happy to be